What if the very fabric of reality, from the tiniest particle right up to the biggest galaxy, isn't just governed by these incredibly complex equations we hear about? What if it's actually based on something, well, something simpler, something familiar, maybe even like music? Today, we're taking a deep dive into a really extraordinary vision of the universe, one that's rooted in harmony and geometry.
We are. We're looking at excerpts from Philip Lillian's Harmonic Physics, Volume 4, Curvature, Topology, and the Vesica Cascade. And this volume, it lays out the latest developments in his unified coherence theory of everything, the UCTE.
Right, the UCTE. So our mission here, for you listening, is to really unpack how this theory suggests harmonic ratios, musical intervals and these sacred geometries, how they aren't just symbols or nice patterns, but maybe the literal scaffolding upon which reality emerges. That's the claim. You're going to discover how ideas we usually think belong in, like music class or art history, might actually be the fundamental operators of physics and biology, consciousness. So yeah, get ready for some truly mind-bending insights. Okay, so to kick things off, this theory argues that simple integer ratios, you mentioned musical intervals like 2.1, the octave, or 3.2, a perfect fifth, 4.3, a perfect fourth. These aren't just sounds we find pleasing. Lillian says they are expressions of coherence eigenstates. Can you maybe break that down a bit? What does that actually mean, coherence eigenstates in reality?
Yeah, absolutely. Think of it like a guitar string. It vibrates most strongly, most stably at specific frequencies, right? Its fundamental tone, its harmonics. These ratios, these coherence detractors are like that, but for reality itself. They represent the most stable, resonant configurations of relationships. They're not just numbers on a page. They're phase-aligned resonant states, deep patterns. And this is really foundational. The idea is that reality is quite literally encoded through harmonic operators.
Encoded through harmonics. Okay, so if the ratios are the notes, the vibrations, then geometry must be like the instrument or the structure holding it. Because the paper mentions specific shapes, the Vesica pieces, that overlapping circle thing, the 64 tetrahedron grid, platonic solids. How do these geometric forms fit into this cosmic symphony? What do they do?
Exactly. They're not just passive shapes. They function as dimensional resonance gates.
Yeah.
You can sort of picture them as specialized doorways or channels. They facilitate phase-aligned coherence, basically, keeping things in sync across different types of fields, scalar, vector, bivector, tensor fields, these different layers of physical description. So geometry becomes the language of dimensional transition. Each specific shape, each volume is operative. It's an ontological operator, like a switch or maybe a bridge, connecting different levels of reality.
Wow, okay. Active geometry. That's a shift. And one shape gets a lot of attention here, the Vesica pieces. It's called a dimensional bifurcation gate. What exactly does that mean? Like a fork in the dimensional road?
It's described as a pivotal portal for nonlinear dimensional bifurcation. So yeah, kind of like a crucial junction point.
Yeah.
In the model they call HDM, the hyperfractal dimensional emergence model, the 3D Vesica is pictured as a coherence membrane. It's the overlapping region between two spheres. And here's the really specific part. Its volume, compared to the volume of one whole sphere, has a precise ratio. It's 16.5, so it's not just any shape. It's a transitional coherence region that specifically encodes or connects the 5th and 16th coherence layers. It's a very specific bridge.
16:5. Okay, that's incredibly specific. And this is where it gets really wild, right? The musical connection. Because that ratio, 16.5, which is 3.2, musically that's like a minor sixth, which is 8.5, but shifted up an octave, times 2.
Yeah.
So this geometric gateway, the Vesica, isn't just a neutral doorway. It holds harmonic tension and resolution simultaneously. Does that imply that, that cosmic events like dimensions emerging or symmetries breaking literally have a harmonic quality? Like a musical chord that creates tension and then resolves.
Yeah.
That's quite something.
That seems to be exactly the implication. The Vesica isn't neutral. Its inherent ratio embodies a specific harmonic relationship. And connecting that to the bigger picture, the UCTE suggests that dimensions don't always emerge in a straight line, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Getting to something like dimension 16 from dimension 5 might not be linear. It might happen via a resonant leap via the Vesica membrane. Yeah. It's described as a cross-mode coherence shortcut. The shape itself provides the harmonic structure for that jump.
A resonant leap. Okay, so we've got these fundamental harmonies, these active geometries like the Vesica, maybe acting as blueprints for reality. But if reality is built on these kinds of musical harmonic principles, what does that do to our standard picture of physics? Because, I mean, the source introduces the coherence reduction model, and it explicitly says it's a replacement for the standard model of particle physics. That's huge. How does this theory rewrite the rulebook? What are the key differences?
It's a fundamental shift, yeah. A complete rethink. For starters, instead of quantum fields, the theory talks about hypersymmetry layers. Think of them as underlying energetic strata. And mass. This is a big one. Mass doesn't come from the Higgs field. It emerges from coherence gradient curvature. Imagine ripples on water where the water curves most steeply. That's analogous to where mass appears. It's about the shape of the coherence field.
Okay, so mass isn't a particle interaction, it's geometry of the field.
Essentially, yes. And quantum spin. Not an intrinsic property, but a projection of bivectorial field rotation, like a tiny vortex in the field structure. And the particles themselves, elementary particles, are redefined as harmonic differentiation operators. They're emergent, stable patterns, eigenmodes, arising from something called the coherence harmonic algebra, the CHA. Think of them as stable notes produced by the universe's instrument.
Harmonic differentiation operators. Wow, okay. And forces, like electromagnetism or gravity.
Force mediation also changes. It's not about exchanging virtual particles. It's seen as resonance interference patterns that modulate the continuity between fields, how the fields connect and interact.
This really turns everything upside down. It sounds like the universe isn't just following rules, it's almost composing itself through these harmonics that are just mathematically inevitable. The theory describes this reduction cascade, starting from something called the omnilectic seed math, the absolute primal blueprint, the irreducible source of coherence. Then, through hypersymmetry, bivectorial coherence splitting, harmonic differentiation, and finally arriving at atomical frameworks and physical manifestation. It sounds like you're saying the whole structure of reality, down to atoms, is just an unavoidable consequence of these initial harmonic principles, a cosmic symphony playing out.
That's a very good way to capture the essence of it, yes. It's presented as a top-down unfolding, where complexity emerges from a very fundamental, simple coherence, algebraically and topologically inevitable, as they put it.
And this even extends to the universal constants, right? Things like pi or the golden ratio, phi, even the fine structure constant. Usually we just think of them as numbers that pop up in equations. But in this framework, they're more than that. They're ontological constants, active players.
Exactly. They have specific roles in maintaining or structuring this coherence. Take the golden ratio, phi. It's described as a scalar tensor interface and spiral generator. Its role is to define the spiral path of coherence transfer in a way that minimizes destructive interference when fields curve or interact, which, the theory suggests, is why we see this spiral pattern showing up everywhere: DNA, galaxies, even neural branching. It's the most efficient, harmonious way for coherence to propagate.
So phi is like nature's optimal design principle for flow. Okay, you mentioned the perfect fourth earlier, the 4.3 ratio. That one seems to bridge different concepts in a really interesting way. What's its special job here?
Right, the perfect fourth, 4.3 or 1.333. It's interpreted as a coherence fusion node. Sure. What's really intriguing is how they derive it. It supposedly symbolically combines the unity field, the background hypergravity, which has a coherence amplitude of 1.0 day. It combines that with the fractional amplitude of strong field resonance, given as 0.333, which they link to the SU3 symmetry of the strong nuclear force. And, well, 1 plus 13 is 43.
Huh. So it naturally arises from combining unity with this fundamental strong force resonance.
That's the proposal. This 4.3 ratio acts as a harmonically stabilized curvature operator. It's seen as a key bifurcation threshold, a point where the underlying unity, the scalar field, meets the curvature of vector or tensor fields, and that interaction is what initiates structure formation. It's where things start to clump together harmoniously.
A simple musical interval acting as a cosmic switch for creating structure. That's remarkable. And maybe the most compelling part for you listening right now is how this incredibly high-level theory might actually show up in our world, particularly in biology and maybe even in future technologies. The UCTE claims biological systems aren't separate from this, they're deeply integrated. How so?
Well, the text is quite explicit. It states that DNA, cell membranes, and water are examples of bioharmonic vesica structures. Things like the spacing in the DNA helix, the way cell membranes regulate what goes in and out, even the potential for water to hold resonant information. These are all proposed to be rooted in the same fundamental harmonic principles that structure the cosmos. Biology is tuned in.
Bioharmonic vesica structures. Okay, and this leads us to something called aquahel, which sounds pretty fascinating. It's described as a colloidal ionic resonance medium, almost like a liquid crystal of intent. What is this stuff supposed to be?
Aquahel is presented as a special kind of phase-stabilized water. It has a phase-locked lattice,
Mm.
supposedly created using Vesica-based vortex flow, so the geometry is key again. And because of this structure, the idea is that it can effectively remember and then re-emit specific coherent frequencies or information patterns. Its proposed function is to neutralize bioincoherence disruptions in the body's energy fields or structures by reintroducing phase-locked coherence, like retuning a biological system.
A resonant tuning fork for biology. That opens up some really interesting possibilities for applications, doesn't it? And it seems the theory isn't just staying abstract. There's talk of a coherence engine, a device built on these resonance ideas, using a Vesica chamber as its core harmonic operator.
Yeah.
The source even hints at actual prototypes. Can you give us a flavor of what kinds of things Lillian is envisioning?
Oh, absolutely. The range is quite broad, moving from potential near-term applications to things that sound distinctly, well, futuristic. For instance, there's the Vesica phase biofield amplifier. This is described as a healing device. It uses Vesica geometry to try and entrain biological systems into harmonic alignment, bring them back into coherence.
Okay, a healing device. Makes sense given the bioharmonic idea. What else?
Then there's a DNA phase entrainment capsule. The goal here is restoring epigenetic integrity and maybe even telomeric stability, the ends of chromosomes, by exposing samples to these stabilized coherence fields.
Right, targeting the very blueprint of life.
And for the brain, there's the neural phase locking resonator. This aims to restore neural signal clarity. It proposes coupling brainwave dynamics to scalar bivector harmonic fields, and it mentions using aquential Helm circuits.
All-coil circuits for brain health. Interesting. And for the whole body.
Yes, they describe something called the harmonic chrysalis. It's a full-body scalar reharmonization chamber. The idea is total biofield restoration by immersing the body in a dynamically tuned scalar resonance matrix.
Huh.
It uses arrays of vesica-trivesica arrays and an aqua-shell diffusion platform.
The harmonic chrysalis. Wow. And you mentioned something even more speculative.
Definitely the most speculative one is the entanglement chamber for intelligent symbiosis. This is envisioned as a resonance-based symbiosis chamber. Its purpose, to facilitate non-invasive entanglement between human neural fields and intelligent systems, which seems to mean coherence-driven AI for essentially shared intelligence, mind melding via resonance.
Okay, that last one is really out there. Shared intelligence with AI through resonance. So wrapping this up for you, our listener, what does all this really mean? We've gone deep into a theory that sees reality not as bits and pieces, forces and particles acting separately, but as this incredibly interwoven symphony. A universe built on harmonic resonance, from how dimensions might emerge through that Vesica node all the way to potential healing technologies, maybe even advanced AI, using these coherence engines. It paints a picture where harmony is truly fundamental.
It really does challenge us, doesn't it, to think beyond our standard categories of space, time, matter, energy. It suggests that maybe the deepest truths aren't hidden in ever-increasing complexity, but perhaps in the elegance, the inherent simplicity of these harmonic ratios and geometric forms we see reflected in music and nature.
So, the final thought to leave you with, what if the universe isn't just like music? What if, in some fundamental way, it is music? And if that's the case, how might really understanding these universal harmonics change how we approach, well, everything? Medicine, technology, maybe even understanding our own consciousness. Definitely something to mull over.